Dear secondary stage students, welcome to our English program. Today we are going to continue Unit 8. We are going to start Part 2 of Unit 8. It's time for grammar. We are going to take today if conditional. As you know, grammar is a very important part of studying language. And if conditional is a very important rule, and we want to be perfect in using it. Let's start together. Let's see our objectives for today. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to use conditional clause correctly. You're going to use if to express habits, facts, probability, improbability, or regret using conditional clause. What's a conditional clause? Conditional clause is using if clause, we call it if clause, to express that an action will only happen if a condition happens. What does it mean? Let me explain it in a simpler way. If I say, if you study, you will succeed, it means that success will not happen unless you study. So the action of studying should happen first in order for success to follow. Okay? So there is a condition. Condition اللي هو شرط. في شرط هنا to happen so that success can follow. Okay, let's see here. We have many kinds of conditional if. We have zero conditional. We have type 1, if conditional type 1, and the type 2, and type 3. So we have 4 types of if conditional. If 0, the first conditional, the second conditional, and the third conditional. Now look at these pictures and try to use if conditional to express about this picture. What can we say about this picture? As you see here in the picture, water is boiling. So what can we say about the picture using if? We can say, if water boils, it turns into steam. This is a fact. Whenever you put the water on the oven and it boils, it turns into steam. So here we use the present simple, present simple. If water boils, that's a present simple, it turns into steam, again present simple. So this is if 0, and it's used for facts. What about this picture? What's wrong with this young lady? She's having headache. What do you do when you have headache? Can you tell me what you do when you have headache? If I feel headache, I take an aspirin. This is my habit. If I feel headache, I take an aspirin. So again, we use the present simple. If I feel, I take. Present simple, present simple. So again, we use the present simple in zero conditional to express habits. So we can use it to express fact or habit. What about this photo? We see a student is studying and she is hopeful. She wants to succeed in the future. So what can we say about her? We can say, if I study, I will succeed. So here it expresses the future, a probability in the future, something that will happen in the future. If I study now, I will succeed in the future. What about this picture? You as secondary stage students, all of you are hoping to join the university. So what can we say about the picture using if? We can say, if I get high marks, I will join the university. If I get high marks, this is present simple, I will join the university. This is future. So we use the present simple and the future will to express something probable, something that is certain to happen. If you study, it's certain that you will succeed. If you get high marks, I'm sure that you will join a good university. So we use if type 1, present, future to express something that is probable in the future. What about this photo? We can say, if I am tall, if I were tall, I would play basketball. If I were tall, this is if type 2. Does it express the past? No, it doesn't express the past. It expresses the present, but it's something improbable in the present. Something improbable or impossible. So what does it mean if I were tall? It means I am not tall. At the present time, I'm not tall. So I can't play basketball. So I wish if I were tall, so I expect something against the reality. The fact that I am not tall and I cannot play basketball. So I wish if I were tall, I would be able to play basketball. So we use if type 2 to express something improbable or something against the reality. عشان كده ممكن نستخدم if type 2 عشان ندي بيها advice. يعني I can say if I were you, I would study. Of course, I will not be in your place, but it's something imaginable. So if I were you, if I were in your place, I would study. This is some kind of advice. Now look at this picture. It shows a person who is having a heart attack. Why did he have a heart attack? Because he ate a lot of junk food, a lot of fast food. Fried potatoes and sweets and so on. So he is having a heart attack. So it means that he ate fast food and the result is that he had a heart attack. So the two actions are in the past. So we can say here, if I hadn't eaten too much food, yes? If I hadn't eaten too much food, I wouldn't have been ill. So it means that he ate too much fast food and he became ill. So here we use the third conditional. It means that he regretted. He was sorry that he had eaten that much food and that he became too ill. Now let's start from the beginning, the zero conditional. When do we use the zero conditional? And what is the zero conditional? The zero conditional is using if plus present simple, present simple. So when do we use it? We use it to express fact or habit. We use this rule to express fact or habit, as we said before, to express fact or habit. Look at this example. If water freezes, it turns into ice. If water freezes, it turns into ice. زي ما قلنا قبل كده, if water boils, it turns into steam. كمان if water is frozen, لو تم تجميده, it turns into ice. It will be solid and it will turn into ice. So this is a fact. This is a fact. Whenever you put some water in the freezer, it turns into ice. Okay, so we use this rule to express a fact. Look at the other example. If you heat water, it boils. Again, if you heat water, if you put it on the oven, of course it boils. If I feel tired, I usually go to bed. Here is a habit. يبقى احنا ممكن نعبر عن fact or habit. Habit, if I feel tired, I usually go to bed. This is my habit. When I feel tired, I usually go to bed. When I feel headache, I usually take an aspirin or I usually take a cup of coffee. This is my habit. So we use zero conditional. This is present simple. If plus present simple plus present simple, this is to express either fact or habit. Okay? What about the usage of when? We can use when again instead of if. We can use when instead of if to give the same meaning. So we can say here, metals expand when they are heated. Metals expand, they become bigger, they become larger, they become bigger in size when they are heated. So metals expand when they are heated. We can say metals expand if they are heated. So we can use when instead of if. Look at the other example. When water freezes, it turns into ice. Again, we can use if water freezes or when water freezes, it turns into ice. So we can use here when instead of if. Now look at this example to make sure that you understand the rule correctly. If the bark of a tree is destroyed, what is the bark of the tree? The bark of the tree is the outer covering of the tree. الطبقة الخارجية الخشنة اللي بتغطي الشجرة دي اسمها the bark. If the bark of a tree is destroyed, the tree died, is dying, would die, dies. طبعا هنا أنا بتكلم على fact, something which is sure to happen. If the bark is destroyed, what happens? Of course, the tree dies. Of course, the tree dies. So this is a fact. Whenever the bark is destroyed, the tree dies. We can use here when instead of if, so we can say when the bark of the tree is destroyed, the tree dies. Look at question number 2. Water freeze if the temperature 0 or below. Of course, this is a fact, and we mentioned this example before. If water freeze, عندنا هنا الverb أهو present simple. What about the other verb? Water freeze if the temperature is 0 or below. So we use again the present simple. Water freeze if the temperature is 0 or below. Now what about the first conditional? When do we use the first conditional? We use the first conditional to express something that will happen in the future. Promise, threat, probability. The rule is that we use if plus present simple, and then in the other clause we will use will, can, may plus verb infinitive. When do we use will, can, may? When we want to express promise, threat, probability, something that will happen in the future. Let's look at some examples. If she has enough time tomorrow, she will type the report. So here I'm not talking about a fact, I'm talking about something that will happen in the future. If she has enough time tomorrow, she will type the report. So if she finds the time, she will do that. So we use the present simple in the first clause, and in the second clause we use will. It means that something is probable or something is certain to happen in the future. Look at the other example. If I earn some money, I will go abroad. Here again we use the first conditional to talk about the future. If I earn money now, I will be able in the future to travel abroad. Let's look at some examples to make sure that we understand the first conditional. If they extract a thin piece of wood from the tree, its age. Of course, the verb in the first clause is present simple. So the verb in the second clause use would, calculate, can calculate, have calculated, or might have calculated. Of course, we agreed that when the first sentence is present simple, the second clause will have can, will, or may. فإحنا عندنا إيه في الأوبشنز؟ عندنا هنا can. So we can use can. If they extract a thin piece of wood, they can calculate the age of the tree. Again, we can use the imperative with the if conditional type 1. What is the imperative? Imperative means order. I give order to someone. When I say stand up, sit down, go out, this is imperative. So what's imperative? When I order someone to do something. Can we use the imperative in the first conditional? Yes, instead of using will or can, we can use the imperative form. How can we use that? For example, if I say, if you are in a library, be quiet. If you are in a gas station, don't smoke. So here is imperative, order. If you are in a class, follow the rules. Follow the rules. If you meet Ali, tell him to phone me. Tell him. So here we use imperative, order. And instead of using will or can, we can use imperative, the order form. Let's look at some examples. We can use the imperative sentence in the first conditional. For example, we can say, if you have a headache, take an aspirin. شايفين هنا احنا ما استخدمناش will ولا can، قلنا ايه take على طول. Take an aspirin. If you have a headache, take an aspirin. Okay, let's look at another example. If you come across Ali at the supermarket, ask him to phone me. If you come across Ali means if you meet Ali by chance, if you meet Ali in the supermarket, ask him, tell him. So this is imperative. Okay, so we can use the imperative or the order form in the first conditional. Let's look at some examples. If you meet Ahmed, him this book. So if you meet Ahmed, give him, will give him, would have given, or might give. Of course here we don't have a subject, so we can't use will. يعني أنا لو عندي مثلا you كان ممكن أقول you will أو you can أو you should، لكن طالما ما فيش subject فأنا هعمل imperative form اللي هي صيغة الأمر الأوردر اللي احنا قلنا عليها. ف if you meet Ahmed, give him the book. If you meet Ahmed, give him the book. Again, in the first conditional, we can use some other words rather than if. We have some other words which we can use instead of if. So if you want if and you don't find if in the options, you can find some other words which give the same meaning of if. إيه بقى الكلمات اللي ممكن تدينا the same meaning of if? We can say provided that. Provided that. We can say on condition. We can say as long as. We can say providing or providing that. يعني that is optional. We can put it or remove it. Provided, provided that, providing, providing that, or as long as. We can also say in case, on condition. All these words can be used instead of if. So instead of saying if you study you will succeed, we can say provided that you study you will succeed. خلينا أقولها لكم مرة تانية كده إن إحنا we can say if you study you will succeed. This is if conditional type 1. طيب أنا لو مش عندي if في الأوبشنز فأنا ممكن ألاقي as long as you study you will succeed. We can say provided that you study you will succeed. We can say providing that you study you will succeed. We can say in case you study you will succeed. So we have many other words other than if. شايفين الإكزامبل معانا هنا provided that you have a lot of money you can buy this car. يعني we can say if you have a lot of money you can buy this car. وكمان we can say provided that you have a lot of money you can buy this car. What about the second conditional? The second conditional, this is the past simple, would or could. When do we use the second conditional? We use the second conditional to express improbability. زي ما احنا شايفين هي الستراكشر بتاعها past ولكن it doesn't express the past. It doesn't express the past. مش بتعبر خالص عن الباست. أمال بتعبر عن إيه؟ بتعبر عن something in the present but it is improbable or impossible. زي إيه مثلا؟ خلوني أقول لكم كده if I were a bird I would fly. خليكم معايا كده شوية. لو أنا قلت if I were a bird I would fly. هل دي حاجة ممكن تحصل؟ لا أكيد لا. I will not be a bird. So we use the past. If I were a bird I would fly. Does this express the future? Does this express the past? No, it expresses the present. It means that it is impossible for me in the present to be a bird and in the future of course. So we say if I were a bird I would fly. I am not a doctor, I'm a teacher as you know. So if I say if I were a doctor I would treat you. What does it mean? It means I am not a doctor and I can't treat you. So we use the past if I were a doctor not to express the past. احنا بنستخدم الباست هنا مش عشان نعبر عن الباست، لا to express the present. But it is something improbable، شيء مش محتمل or impossible. If I were a doctor I would treat you. What does this sentence mean? It means I'm not a doctor and I cannot treat you. Okay? نبص كده للإكزامبل معانا. If she had wings she would fly. If she had wings she would fly. Of course it's impossible for her to have wings and to fly, so we use if type 2, past and would. If she had wings, she would fly. Look at the other example. If she were a scientist, she could do experiments. It means that she isn't a scientist. If she were a scientist, means that she isn't a scientist and she can't do experiments. If she were a scientist, she could do experiment. Okay, let's look at some examples. If you had enough money, they a palace. If they had هنا عندنا past simple. يبقى هستخدم بقى would, can, have, or might. Of course, when we use the past simple, we use would or could or might plus verb infinitive. يبقى الأوبشن اللي عندنا الوحيد اللي ينفع أختاره هو would buy. طب ليه ما ينفعش might؟ ما هي might موجودة. علشان دي might have. أنا كنت محتاجة might والverb infinitive. يبقى أنا ممكن أستخدم would or could or might plus verb infinitive. What about the third conditional? The third conditional is the only type which expresses the past. دي الحالة الوحيدة بقى اللي بتعبر عن ال past. The rule says that if plus past perfect would have plus past participle. What does it express? It expresses regret or wish in the past wish. So if we regret about something in the past, or if we wish we hadn't done something in the past, we use if type 3. Do you remember the man in the picture who had eaten a lot of junk food and became very ill? So he regretted. He said, if I hadn't eaten a lot of fast food, I wouldn't have been ill. So it expresses regret. Let's look at the example. If she had studied last year, she would have succeeded. What does this sentence mean? It means that she didn't study last year and she didn't succeed. So the two actions are in the past. The two actions happened in the past. So when the two actions happened in the past, we use the past perfect and would have plus past participle. This is type 3. So we say if she had studied, she would have succeeded. Look at the other example. If she had had enough money last year, she would have bought a car. What does this sentence mean? It means that she didn't have enough money last year and she didn't buy a car. So the two actions happened in the past, so we use the past perfect and would have plus past participle. If she had had enough money last year, she would have bought a car. Let's look at this exercise. If the car hadn't broken down. شايفين هنا عندنا أول verb في ال past perfect. If the car hadn't broken down. So this is type 3. If the car hadn't broken down, I late for the match. I wouldn't be, I wouldn't have been, I won't be, I couldn't be. Of course here we have had plus past participle. يبقى ال second clause لازم يكون فيها ايه؟ لازم يكون فيها would have plus past participle. يبقى ال right answer هتبقى ايه؟ ايوه فعلا wouldn't have been. If the car hadn't broken down, I wouldn't have been late. What does this sentence mean? It means that my car broke down and I was late for the match. He took goals if he took part in the match. طبعا عندنا هنا بعد if took عندنا هنا ال past simple. طيب طالما ان هو past simple يبقى هستخدم scores, will score, would score or scored. طبعا لما يكون past simple يبقى معنى كده احنا بنستخدم type 2. type 2 يبقى هيبقى عندي يا اما would, might or could. يبقى ال right option اللي عندنا هنا ايه؟ ايوه فعلا would score. He would score 2 goals if he took part in the match. What does this sentence mean? It means that he doesn't have the chance to take part in the match and it's not probable for him to score goals. Question number 8. If dinner is not ready, I without it. عندنا الverb هنا present is. If dinner is. يبقى طالما الفيرب present يبقى أنا أكيد هستخدم إيه؟ ينفع أستخدم go, will go, would go or would have gone. طبعا طالما الفيرب present أكيد أنا هستبعد خالص would go و would have gone. ممكن أفكر في go و will go. طيب go دي معناها إن دي fact. هل دي fact؟ هل هنا بتكلم على fact أو habit؟ لا، أنا بتكلم على حاجة expected in the future، إن if dinner is not ready I will go without it. So I will go without it. Question number 9. If I no money I would borrow some from you. عندي هنا would. طالما السكند كلوز فيها would يبقى أكيد الفيرب اللي في الفيرست كلوز هيبقى عبارة عن إيه؟ هيبقى عبارة عن present. طالما past سوري، طالما عندي would يبقى يكون past. يعني أنت لو لقيت will هتاخد present، لقيت would يبقى past، لقيت would have والpast participle هاخد past perfect. أنا عندي هنا would يبقى أكيد أنا لازم آخد إيه؟ آخد الباست. فين بقى الباست؟ عندي had. طب ليه ما خدناش had ده past perfect، كان لازم يكون عندي would have والpast participle عشان أخده. Question number 10. If the sky clear yesterday I would have seen the eclipse. شايفين احنا بنتكلم على yesterday يعني حاجة in the past، كمان عندنا would have والpast participle would have seen، يبقى أكيد ده type 3، وطالما هو type 3 يبقى أنا هستخدم had والpast participle. يبقى الأوبشن الصح عندي هقول had been. If the sky had been clear yesterday I would have seen the eclipse. What does this sentence mean? It means that the sky wasn't clear yesterday and I couldn't see the eclipse yesterday. Okay. Now I have some important notes for you. Do you know the word unless? Unless is similar to if. It takes the same rules of if, but it is the negative of if. So if I say unless you study, you won't succeed. If you don't study hard, you won't pass the exam. أنا هنا استخدمت if you don't study hard. طب أنا بدل ما استخدم if ومعاها negative أنا ممكن استخدم unless على طول، فأقول unless you study hard. بدل ما أقول if you don't study hard هقول unless you study hard you won't pass the exam. So what does it mean unless? Unless means if not. So it's the negative form of if. We can use unless to express the negative form of if. Okay. Another important note is the word in case of. Do you know this word in case of? In case of is followed by verb plus ing or noun. So instead of saying if you study you will succeed, you can say in case of studying you will get high marks, you will succeed. In case of studying يبقى ايه الفرق بين ان انا لما استخدم if واستخدم in case of؟ انا لو قلت if هقول if you study، لكن لو قلت in case of is followed by ing, so I will say in case of studying you will get high marks. تمام؟ يبقى احنا كده نفرق ما بين if و in case of. انا خلي بالنا احنا لو قلنا in case بس هتبقى زيها زي if، يعني لو قلت if you study you will succeed ممكن اقول in case you study you will succeed. ماشي، اعد لكم الحته دي كده تاني، خليكم معايا ان انا لو بقول if you study you will succeed ممكن اقول زيها بالظبط in case you study you will succeed. يبقى in case is similar to if، زي if بالظبط. in case you study ممكن اقول if you study or in case you study you will succeed. طب ايه الفرق بينها وبين in case of؟ in case of is followed by ing or noun، فاقول in case of studying. We can't say in case you study, in case of you study، لا بنقول in case of studying you will succeed. In case of hard work ممكن احط noun اهو in case of hard work you will succeed. يبقى in case of is followed by ing، لكن in case only is similar أو is the same as if. نبص الإكزامبل كمان. in case of fire break the glass. in case of fire أنا هنا استخدمت أهو noun in case of fire، يبقى في ال first sentence in case of studying حطينا هنا الverb ing، وفي ال second example قلت in case of fire we used here the noun. We have also the word but for and without. But for and without are followed by noun or verb plus ing. So it's similar to unless, but what is the difference between unless and but for? Unless is followed by a complete sentence, but for is followed by ing or noun. So we say, but for doing research, we won't have any progress. But for doing research, we won't have any progress. So if I want here in this sentence to use unless, I will say unless you do research. Unless هيجي بعدها جملة كاملة فهقول unless you do research. لكن but for is followed by verb ing and it has a negative meaning. But for his help. هنا كمان we used noun. يبقى we can use noun or verb ing. But for his help, I wouldn't have passed the exam. We can say without his help. Without his help, I wouldn't have passed the exam. As you see, we used it in if type 1, if type 2, or if type 3. Okay, let's look at some exercise. Studying astronomy at school, he can't have become an astronomer. Can't have become. So here it's a negative form. So we say without studying astronomy. ليه استخدمنا without؟ ليه ما قلناش unless مثلا؟ طبعا هي نيجاتيف، السكند كلوز نيجاتيف، فيبقى اكيد انا محتاجه حاجه نيجاتيف. طيب انا عندي unless وعندي without. Why didn't we use unless? Because unless is followed by a complete sentence. It should have a subject and a verb. لكن without is followed by verb ing. So we say without studying astronomy, he can't have become an astronomer. Question number 12. If I rich, I would buy a big car. If I rich, I would buy a big car. Of course, here in the second clause, we have the word would. So we must use past simple. عشان كده نبقى بنستخدم if type 2. So what is the past simple? If I were rich, if I am rich, if I had rich, or if I will be rich. Of course, we have two options in the past, were and had. But here I wanted to say if I were tall, not if I had, because had means if I own. I don't want to own being rich. If I were rich, I would buy a car. So if I were rich, I would buy a car. What does this word mean, this sentence mean? It means that I am not rich, so I cannot buy a car. طيب نلخص بقى اللي احنا قلناه كده كله. احنا النهارده we were talking about conditional if. We said that we have zero conditional, first conditional, second conditional, and third conditional. The zero conditional, present is used for fact and habit. If type 1, present simple plus will, is used to express the future. The second conditional, past plus would, is used to express something improbable or impossible. The third conditional, past perfect plus would have and past participle, expresses regret, expresses the past wish or regret about something in the past. Okay, this is the end of our lesson today. I hope you benefited a lot from it. Practice a lot because practice makes perfect. Until we meet again in our next session, I wish you best of luck. Goodbye.